A very good morning to my dear students of class 8, and I am glad to welcome you all to today's botany class. What are we going to learn today? Today's topic is going to be about food chain and food web. What is the topic for today? Food chain and food web. So let's get started. Before learning about food chain and food web, there are two more terms what you have to study. One is called decomposers and the next term is detrivores. So what are we going to learn? About decomposers and detrivores we will study and then learn about food chain and food web. What are decomposers? Decomposers can be defined as bacteria and fungi which can break down either dead body or decayed organic matter can be defined as decomposers. What did I tell you? Either bacteria or fungi which can degrade or break down a dead body or decayed organic matter are called as decomposers. See, in our day-to-day life there are many plants which wither their leaves. Daily in your garden you can see so much of dried leaves falling down, no? But at some point it will not be present, it means it decays by itself, right? Even if you don't burn or do something, it will decay by itself. Similarly, we bury millions of people under the ground, no? But at some point of time everything is decayed. Why? Because of these bacteria and fungi only it is decayed. Okay, they are called as decomposers because they break down any dead organisms or decayed organic matter. What is organic matter? All plants and animals have their composition organic composition. Okay, if carbon is present then you can call them as organic matter. We have so much of carbon particles in our body as well as plants have, that's why we are considered as organic materials after we die. And what is the advantage of these decomposers? As I told you, either plant waste or even animal waste can be decomposed so that the environment is made clean. Just imagine if there is no decomposers, how much of waste will be accumulated. Of course, there are man-made waste, no, like plastic all we still have, but the natural ones, the living organisms can be decayed by these decomposers. That's why the environment is clean. That is the advantage of the decomposers. So this is about decomposers. Okay, how do these decomposers function? How do they work? How they can break any organic matter? These decomposers actually they secrete enzymes, just like how our digestive system all secretes enzymes. No, our body has so many enzymes. No, similarly these bacteria and fungi also secrete many enzymes, and these enzymes will act on the organic plant or animal material and then they will be converted into simple nutrients. What are simple nutrients? It can be either a gas. See, when we digest food, what is the waste we release? We release carbon dioxide gas as well as urea and many materials we release, right? So similarly, when these enzymes break these organic materials also, certain gases are released like nitrogen and carbon are released to the environment. Not only gases, maybe in the form of carbon dioxide if it is carbon, or even in mineral forms, the nitrogen and carbon is also released into the environment. Apart from this, there are some waste which the bacteria can itself use. See, there is organic material, no? The bacteria breaks the material. Some is released to the environment. Say for example, nitrogen and carbon is released to the environment. The other materials, no, what it breaks or the nutrients, the organism itself will consume as a food for it. Clear? So totally nothing is a waste material now. Either a mineral is released into the environment or the substance itself is taken in by the bacteria or the fungi. So the other products are absorbed by the bacteria or fungi as its nutrients. This is how it works. How it works? It produces enzymes and breaks the organic plant or animal material, and certain minerals like carbon and nitrogen are released into the environment so that the plants and other organisms can take them, and the remaining materials are used by the bacteria or fungi itself. So this is about decomposers. What are detrivores then? Detrivores are small animals which are present in soil or aquatic environment. See, what is the difference between decomposers and detrivores? Decomposers, the first difference is decomposers are microorganisms like bacteria and fungi come under microorganisms category, but these detrivores, no, they come under animal category. Small worms, or even see the two examples given in your book is mites and slug. This is slug and this is mite. And earthworm, you know, right? Even earthworm is a detrivore. Okay, because you can think it is a worm. How come animal? In your grade 7 you have if you have studied about your classification lesson thoroughly, you know that even insects come under the kingdom called Animalia. So they are also considered as animals in technical terms. Okay, so small animals are detrivores, microorganisms are decomposers. Okay, and one more difference is the decomposers function is by producing enzymes, they break the organic material. No, these detrivores, what they do, they just eat small fragments of waste, just how we eat food particles. No, similarly small materials they will eat directly, they will not produce enzymes and break and release some and take some like the decomposers, they will just consume as a food. Okay, the small fragments of detritus. Why they are called detritus? Because small particles of dead materials can be turned by the word detritus. So the word detritus means the dead organisms which are very small fragments in nature. When it is broken down into small fragments, no, one fragment can be called as a detritus. So similarly they consume the detritus, that's why they are called as detrivores. So where can you find detrivores? In soil or aquatic environments. And examples for detrivores given in your text is earthworms, mites and slugs. And how it works? They just eat directly small detritus or dead material. This is about decomposers and detrivores. Now we learn about food chain. Okay, before learning about the process of food chain, what all happens in a food chain, let's define the food chain. What is a food chain? It is a feeding relationship. See, chain, you know, interconnected ones, no, even the chain what you wear will be like a connection of small particles, no, that's why it is called by the word chain. Here what is connected? Organisms are connected in terms of feeding relationship, the way they eat each other, no, that relationship is called the food chain. When I give example you will understand better. Just know the definition that food chain is a relationship, it is a chain. What chain? Feeding chain. In terms of food intake only this relationship is addressed between different organisms. It is not between non-living and living things, it is exactly between only living organisms. Clear? And what is happening in this process? Energy is transferred. Actually when we eat food for getting energy, no? So when one organism feeds another organism, the energy from organism 1 will be transferred to the organism 2. So this is actually a energy transfer process in the form of a chain. So in physics maybe you must have studied, no, like energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it is transferred from one form to another. That is what is happening here. See, already there is some energy. Say for example plant has energy. When a goat eats the plant, the goat will get the energy. So energy is transferred. That is why it is a energy transferring process step by step. It doesn't jump the steps. It happens like a chain in the form of steps. It cannot skip any step. From producers to consumers. I will explain about producers and consumers in the next slide. Just know that the transfer of energy is initially from the producers to the consumers. What are producers? Those which produce are called as producers. No? In terms of food, plant is the one which produces the food. It is producers. So plants are producers and consumers, whatever eats the producer can be addressed as consumers. Let it be an animal. If a goat eats a plant, then the goat will be the consumer. If we eat plants, like we do eat plants, no, green leaves and all the vegetables all we eat, so we become consumers. So whatever consume the producers, they are called as, they are addressed as consumers. Clear? So as I told you, so before learning about the food chain, you should know these terms thoroughly, only then you will understand when I explain with examples. Okay, what are producers? For now, just keep in mind, actually producers are something which can produce food, no? But in terms of food chain, producers are always green plants, because in this earth only the plants produce its own food, that is only the plants are addressed as autotrophs, and also some lower organisms like algae all are autotrophs, they can produce their own food. In the terms of food chain, remember that producers are always green plants, they are the ones which produces food initially. Then primary consumers are herbivores. What is a herbivore? Maybe from your grade 3 you will be learning about this herbivore, carnivore, no? What is a herbivore? Whatever eats a plant, the animals which depends on plants for their food are called as herbivores. Okay, and these herbivores are the primary consumers. Always you remember this way: primary, secondary, tertiary. Primary, it will be in this order. Primary means the initial one, secondary means the next one, tertiary will be the third level. So when a primary consumer eats the plant, when a herbivore eats the plant, it is called as a primary consumer, because this is the primary means first one, right? So primary consumer is the first one which consumes or eats the producer. So herbivores are addressed as primary consumers. And then what is a secondary consumer? Suppose if a animal is going to eat a primary consumer, then it is called a secondary consumer. I will give you an example. These are plants, no? Producers are always plants, I told you. Let the primary consumer be a goat. Okay, so this primary consumer, a goat is a herbivore, right? It is a plant eating animal. Carnivores means they are flesh eating animals. Are we herbivores or carnivores? Both, right? Because we eat plants as well as we eat animals also. Non-vegetarians will eat both, right? So we come under carnivore category. Vegetarians will be herbivores, and actually there is one more term called omnivores which will eat both plants and animals. We are actually omnivores because we eat both plants and animals. Okay, here say for example the primary consumer is a goat. Okay, so here goat eats the producer, that is the green plant. For this, let this example be, I will write so that you understand better. So what example I told you? Here the producers are goat. Okay, let the the producers are plants, and the primary consumer is a goat. Goat is a herbivore, right? Because it can eat only the plants. Give non-vegetarian to the goat, will it eat? No, right? So the goat is the primary producer here. It will eat the plant. Okay. And for secondary consumer, tell an example for carnivore. What are carnivores? Flesh eating animals, I told you. Lion or tiger can be an example for carnivore. So let the example be lion. Now the lion can eat the goat, right? So plants are eaten by goat. The goat is eaten by lion. It is a secondary consumer. Then the next level, if something else is going to eat this, it is called as tertiary consumer. So the ones which can feed the secondary consumers are called as tertiary consumers. We have some examples in the upcoming slides in the form of diagrams. You will understand better when I show them. So what have we studied in this slide? Initially plants are the producers and the herbivores which consumes the producers are called primary consumers. Those animals which can eat the primary consumers are called secondary consumers, and those organisms which can eat the secondary consumers are called as tertiary consumers. So, we learn examples for these. Okay. So, this is the first example. Here you can see a plant, no? So, what is this? This is a producer. This is a producer. Why producer? Because it is the one which produces food. So, a rat can eat a plant. Okay, a rat can eat a plant. So, this will be, what will be this one? This is a herbivore, right? So, it is a primary consumer. Here the rat is primary consumer. Now, suppose if an owl eats a rat, then this will become the secondary consumer. Secondary consumer. So, producer, primary consumer and secondary consumer. This is one example of a simple food chain. This is called tree-linked food chain. Why? See, a food chain can be very small as well as it can be very long. Okay, it depends on how many organisms are involved in the food chain. Here this is called tree-linked food chain because only 3 organisms are involved in this food chain. Clear? There are 2 more examples given in your text. A 4-linked food chain. Why it is called 4-linked food chain? Because 4 organisms are involved here, 1 plant and 3 animals. No? So here carrot is producer, rabbit is primary consumer, fox is secondary consumer and lion eats the fox, so it is tertiary consumer. Clear? So, carrot is producer, rabbit eats carrot, so it is a primary consumer, fox eats rabbit, so it is a secondary consumer, lion eats fox, so it is a tertiary consumer, and it is called 4-linked food chain because 4 organisms are involved here. And here one more example, 5-linked food chain. That's what I told you, a food chain can be very lengthy, okay, more than 5 also you can have. Here grass is the producer, grasshopper eats the grass, so it is a primary consumer, frog eats the grasshopper, so it is a secondary consumer, python eats the frog, so it is a tertiary consumer, and eagle eats the python. It is not named. After that you don't actually have, you may ask what this is called, what quaternary consumer, like that you can ask. It is not actually termed that way, just it consumes the tertiary consumer. There is no particular term for consumers above the tertiary level. Okay. So, in a food chain, some organisms are eaten by more than 1 organism. See, always it is not that plants should be eaten by grasshoppers. Plants can also be eaten by goats. Plants can also be eaten by human beings. So, it is not that always organism is eaten by any other organism alone. Some examples given in your book. Say for example, rats can be eaten by snake as well as rats can be eaten by eagle. So, it is not necessary that always rats should be eaten by snakes. It can also be eaten by other organisms like eagle. One more example given is dragonfly. It is not necessary that dragonfly should always be eaten by frogs. Dragonflies can also be eaten by lizards. Clear? That is what is meant. Some organisms are eaten by more than 1 organism. This organism can be a food for more than 1 organism. Many organisms can have this as the food source. Okay. Then what is a food web? We know that food chain, you know now. What is a food web? It is a complex web. Generally, what do you call as a web? Spider's web wall. We call that secretion produced by spider as web. Now, why? Because it will be interlinked. There will be like cross links or net. It will be linked to each other, right? That's why it is called as web. Similarly, if many food chains are connected or interlinked to each other, I will give you an example. You will understand better that time. So, if many food chains are interlinked or connected to each other, then it is called by the word food web. So, a complex web which includes many food chains can be defined as food web. Clear? And this food web or food chain, it is always a natural process. We do not force a goat to go and eat. It itself will go and eat if it sees a grass or something. No. So, this food chain or food web is purely a natural process. It is not a artificial process. And there is one point, there can be more than one position. In our last botany Zoom session, there were students asking this question: is goat, say for example, I give you, is a grasshopper always a primary consumer, or is a goat always a primary consumer, or is lion always a secondary consumer or tertiary consumer? It is not that way. That is why it is given. An organism can occupy more than one position, which means the same organism which acts as a primary consumer in one food chain can act as a secondary consumer in some other food chain. It is not necessary that this animal is always a primary consumer. You cannot conclude that way. I will give you an example in the next slide. You will understand this point. Any organism can occupy more than one position in a food chain. Okay. See, this is a food chain. Here only these organisms are involved. What is happening here? The plant or tree is eaten by, leaves are eaten by giraffe, giraffe by lion, and lion by another organism. So, this is a food chain. Only these many organisms are involved here. How many? 1, 2, 3 and 4. So, this is a 4 linked food chain. Whereas, if you see here, this is a complicated one. No, this is called the food web. It is not a chain. It is called the food web because, see, we can start like this. Let this be a food chain. Okay. See, it does not end, even it continues here. A very big food chain. How it starts? It starts with grass. Grass is eaten by a rat. Rat is eaten by some other animal, and that animal is eaten by snake. Snake is eaten by another animal. Another animal is eaten by tiger or cheetah, and the cheetah can be, after it is dead, it is taken in by vulture or eagle, whatever it is. So, very big food chain. Now, how many organisms are involved here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 linked food chain. It is even, it continues. See, it can be again, this vulture can be eaten by this animal. So, it continues like this. It is a very big food chain like this. Okay, this is, say for example, this is food chain number 1. Again, if you consider, you can consider one more food chain. Okay, what is that? This one. Let this be, I will use some other color. Okay. Let this be food chain number 2. Which one? Tree, deer, cheetah. Okay. Now, if you consider this one, this cheetah. Okay. This cheetah, its position in this food chain, producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer it is, right? In this food chain, in blue food chain, cheetah occupies which position? 1, 2 and 3, third position, or I am not talking about position, I will tell you. It is considered as a secondary consumer in this. Why? Tree is producer, deer is primary consumer, cheetah is secondary consumer. Whereas in this food chain, is it a secondary consumer? No. Grass, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, above that and above that only cheetah comes in this food chain, in red food chain, no? So, the position of cheetah is always not a secondary consumer. It can be even above the tertiary consumer. That is what is given. That was your doubt, right? Say for example, the doubt was like this: is cheetah always a secondary consumer? The answer is no, because if you consider these two food chains also, cheetah is a secondary consumer in blue food chain, whereas in red food chain it occupies 5th or 6th level. So, it is not secondary consumer. That is what was given in the previous slide, that organism need not occupy the same position always. The position will vary depending on the food chain. So, here see, there is one food chain here, one food chain here, no? If you see carefully, they will be interlinked. See, this food chain and this food chain is linked through cheetah and vulture, right? So, they are all linked to each other. In a forest, say for example, there will be many food chains interlinked to each other. If there is a food chain which is not connected to any other food chain, then you can call it as a food chain. But if there are many food chains which are interconnected to each other, to many food chains, they are called as food web. Clear? So, if there are many food chains connected to each other, it is called food web. And if there is only one food chain and if the feeding is only among them, it is called as food chain. This is about food chain and food web. Okay, for your homework, what you are going to do is, in your book you have in page number 57, no, there is a picture of a food web. Okay, so what you are going to do, you are going to draw the food web, take a picture of that and send it to me. Okay, and also read from pages 55 to 57. So, keep reading your daily lessons so that it will be easy for your exam point of view. So, until I meet you in one more class, you all take care and bye bye.